I was doing my PhD in Belgium in Antwerp, and at that point of time, NYU was happy to give me an H1B visa, and I was excited. That's fine. Everybody was like, "Oh wow, you got a H1B visa without any lottery. How come that is a possible?"
Talk to us a little more about your background. Where are you from in India? What did you study?
I am from India, in a very small town in UP, Uttar Pradesh. At that point of time, I did a study on Sanskrit, Vedic Pandits, of how the chanting of those Vedas. How does that affect the brain structures for these Pandits? We were trying to quantify animals' behavior, so to understand how animals interact. My animal at that point of time was Drosophila.
It was his last day of visa in Europe, and that was the day his US visa came through. That's how we learned kind of that this is the next step forward. But we had never thought that we would end up staying here, so the green card was really out of the question for us.
Out of just that kind of a frustration to answer people that my profile is not good enough and I don't want to apply, those kind of things, I just asked a lawyer. It was a Victoria Chen. So I asked Victoria Chen, evaluate my profile please.
How did you find her?
In the EB1 circle, Victoria Chen Associates are pretty well known.
I think Jeevan Weaver took me around 3 years to get that document from India.
So excited to have you all on board, and it's so interesting to meet people who built an EB1A profile and are willing to share their story with the audience. And for anyone who's new, I am Priya from It's OK Yaar, and It's OK Yaar is a content platform for South Asian immigrants, and we aim to educate, entertain, and empower them. Hi Tanmay, hi Garima.
Hi Priya. Thank you for having me here.
No, absolutely. You have a very impressive profile. I did check it on LinkedIn. It was very impressive. So thank you for taking the time and sharing your story, especially when you have a toddler and it's 9 p.m. and it's not easy. But I'm excited to get started. So my first question is, how long have you been in the US and what was your journey like? Basically, talk us through your profile. And for anyone who's listening, I will also link Tanmay's LinkedIn on the description box. So definitely check it out.
Yeah, so I think we moved in the US in January of 2016, and since then we are here. For us, like moving to the US, it was like I was doing my PhD in Belgium in Antwerp. There I was applying to jobs for my postdoc and other jobs, and before I was able to finish my PhD, I got an offer from NYU at that point of time in 2016, and that's how I moved in here. And at that point I didn't know anything, nothing about the visa hustle and visa issues. And at that point of time, NYU was happy to give me an H1B visa, and I was excited. That's fine. Everybody was like, "Oh wow, you got a H1B visa without any lottery. How come that is a possible?" And I'm like, "Okay, I just got it." And with that H1B, I moved to the US in January of 2016.
So it was an H1B cap exempt that NYU filed.
Exactly. That's what I came to know afterwards, after a few years, that it is a cap exempt.
Okay, and for anyone who's listening and you don't know what H1B cap exempt is, I will link that in the description box as well, so definitely check it out. But Tanmay, coming back to your story, you were doing your PhD in Belgium. Can you talk to us a little more about your background? Where are you from in India? What did you study? Bachelor's, master's? What was your PhD in?
I am from India, in a very small town in UP, Uttar Pradesh. It is called as Unnao. It has been in news for some notorious activities, but more or less it's a nice small city. That's where I belong to. I did my all the studies back in Unnao and my neighboring city Kanpur. Afterwards, I went on to do my bachelor's in Bharati Vidyapith Pune, where I studied biomedical engineering. At that point of time, everybody in my school was in my college, they wanted to go to US for their MS and all those kind of things. But I wanted to do an MTech back in India itself. I was fortunate to go to IIT BHU, where I did my master's. When I was doing my master's, it was a 2 years program where in 1 year you do your coursework and the other year you do any research project. So I wanted to do something like a research project which was more of a neuroimaging, where you have some brain data sets, you build some algorithms to maybe segment some parts of the brain and those kind of things. So which is why I applied to various universities in the US, asking the professors, sending them cold emails, asking them if they can, if they have a position, they can maybe invite me as a student, and I can work with them, learn more about research. And happily, one of the professors invited me, and that was the University of Iowa in Iowa State. And I spent there around 10 months or so, where I did my research work, and then I went back to India to graduate from ITBHU.
That was a J1 visa.
Yeah, and at that point of time, I came to the US on J1 visa, and of course, at that point of time, I did not know anything about the hustle around J1 visas, because it was easier for him and for me as well. So I just accepted it, and I came to the US. When I went back to India, I went on to do a year's work of research work at National Brain Research Center, Manesar, Gurgaon. That's where I was working more on neuroimaging studies. At that point of time, I did a study on Sanskrit Vedic Pandits, of how the chanting of those Vedas, how does that affect the brain structures for these Pandits. So all these things were going on, and at that point of time, I realized I should do a PhD. So I started applying to PhDs in the US and in Europe, and I was fortunate enough to get a good PhD program in Belgium, which was funded by Marie Curie, and that was around computational biology, I would say. At that point of time, we were trying to quantify animals' behavior. So, to understand how animals interact. My animal at that point of time was Drosophila, which is like a very small flies that you see on banana that sometimes comes up.
The fruit fly.
Yeah, the fruit flies. So we were trying to understand the social network, how these flies are socially interacting with each other. So that was all my journey at that point of time. I was doing my PhD. I finished my PhD, I was about to finish my PhD when I started applying to different jobs in the US, and that's how I moved to the US.
Got it. No, thank you for sharing that. Can we talk about the timelines a little bit? And Garima, when did you come to the US? Are you both green card holders now? I would love to understand the process or the timeline from the fact that you came here January 2016 to getting a green card, and how Garima came to the picture as well.
No, we were married in 2015 when he was wrapping up his PhD.
Okay.
So initially I went to Europe, and I did not go to Europe on a dependent visa either, because we figured that the timeline to get a dependent visa would be too much. So I just took a Schengen visa, like a regular visa, and I went there for 3 months. I came back to India, stayed with my in-laws, and we waited for New York University, NYU, to kind of complete the documentation. And I think you've forgotten, because of his background in neuroimaging, they thought this is something very risky. So he got that background check for the H1B visa. He got the background check because of an earlier J1 visa that I think it's called as 221G. He got so that took time, and it was his last day of visa in Europe, and that was the day his US visa came through. So it was a very tricky situation for us. I was in India, and I moved here with him in January again. I joined him in 2016 in the US.
So you moved here on an H4 visa.
H4, yeah, and cap exempt people, we don't get EADs.
Yes.
So I was jobless. I had no clue about this situation. Luckily, I was in New Jersey, so I had a good friend circle. I had a good support system, and that's how we learned kind of that this is the next step forward. But we had never thought that we would end up staying here. So the green card was really out of the question for us.
So did you receive your green card now? Do you have it with you?
Yeah.
We both got it together.
Okay, and so talk to me through that timeline. So 2016 January, you come in on an H1B visa. She comes with you on an H4 visa. Now, how did you start that conversation with the employer about the green card, or did they initiate it, and what did it look like?
We did not initiate any conversation because we were not at all interested into it. Actually, all our friends used to talk about for the green card. For us, it was like, we are not applying. Let me keep, I'm out of this picture. At that point of time, I was only I started this conversation about green card in 2019, and at that point of time, it was like when people are asking, why don't you apply for a green card? I said, okay, let me just evaluate my profile. Let me see where I stand. And out of just that kind of a frustration to answer people that, my profile is not good enough and I don't want to apply, those kind of things, I just asked a lawyer. It was a Victoria Chen. So I asked Victoria Chen, evaluate my profile, please.
How did you find her? How did you
In the EB1 circle, Victoria Chen associates are pretty well known.
So it was just big research is what you were doing and you came across and then you found.
Yeah. At that point of time, I was doing my postdoc at Harvard, and there I see like a lot of my friends in my floor. They were like, I'm applying, and my Victoria Chen is the most popular. It was just word of mouth that I heard about her, and I wrote a detailed email to her saying that I am this. I was born here. This is my journey, my US visas and J1 visas issues, and all those kind of things that I put in together with my research papers, the number of citations I had. At that point of time, I think I had around 52 citations or something like that. But one of my paper was already published, which was a really good paper at that point of time, but it was growing.
Got it.
Its citations were growing. At that point of time, I had 52 citations, and I wrote her an email asking, like, what do you suggest about myself applying to green card? And she suggested that I should go to a national interest waiver EB2 route, where I apply, and once I get the waiver, I can switch to the EB1 category. And I said, okay, fine. I mean, that's how it is. And then she also told me that maybe if you want, you can improve your profile by doing some of the academic services, like reviewing different journal papers, or
Being editors on
being editor on a specific journals, or you
Write a
could
book.
be write a book chapter, or you could also be on a technical committee for certain conferences, and all those. I think these are all the cases that she had asked me to do in just to improve my profile.
So just if we take a step back, like you came across this profile of this person through word of mouth, you get it evaluated, you send her a description, and she tells you that it's better for EB2 NIW, and then you are now looking to build your profile for EB1A instead. And for that, everything that you cited, you want to list that again one more time, just so that everyone can follow.
Yeah, so one was like keep continuing my research work, keep publishing. The second was start reviewing the papers or the journals. When people submit their articles in scientific journals, it goes to peer reviews. So get onto their email list and get asked your professors or somehow, so that editors start sending you, and you review it individually, not with your professor, individually. And then you can be as a technical committee member on certain conferences, or you could write book chapters.
So those are the things that you added onto your profile to get qualified for EB1A. How long would you say it took you to build up that profile after she said that it's better for EB2 NIW?
We did not actually. That time also we were not building, because we were just finding out, and we understood that it takes time to do these things. We were still willing to go back.
Correct, yeah, but like organically, now that you had that information, possibly the work that you were doing kind of led one thing to the other, and that is how you started getting those additional citations or a book chapter or evaluating judges.
Big paper also came through.
My one of the very big paper came through in 2019, like early 2019, and that triggered a lot of connections by itself, because that was a really big paper that came out, and suddenly I started getting invitations to review certain journals, articles for the certain journals. So I started documenting all those things. Then I started a friend of mine, he invited me to as a technical committee member on one of the conferences that he was organizing. So I think that's big paper triggered a lot of things for me. I don't have to do a lot of efforts. The only effort I had to do was ask one of the journals to be like, can I be a editor on their journal? For that, it was a little bit of a to and fro, but otherwise that paper was
for one paper kind of helped because you were not actively. That's fair. So 2016 you come in, and this 20 you in between you get your EB2 NIW happen, and then in 2019 your big paper happens. And then when did you actually file for your EB1A?
So so I think in October of 2020, around September 2020, at that point of time, I had already moved out from Harvard to Johns Hopkins, and there was a renewal of my contract, and that's when they told me that you are about to reach your H1B a cap, which will I think in 2021 or 22. So we'll just renew your contract for a year, and then we'll move forward with that depending on how much time is left. That's the point where it got stuck to me that, oh, now I am in a little bit of I don't have that much of runway. So I hired Victoria Chen in October 2020. I signed the contract with her that, okay, now I'm in the process. Now I think I have better profile as well, and I told her that I want to do it into EB1A. I don't want to go into a EB2 or an IW route, because by then I had improved my profile, my citations has gone up, and
You knew that you were going to qualify, yeah.
exactly. So that was October 2020 that I would say that I started working on it.
So you start working on October 2020 with her. How long does it take you to actually build that up and file that application?
Yeah, so I think it took around 4 months for me to build up the entire paperwork. And I remember the date was, I think, 8th of February that I actually applied the...
2021. 8th February 2021 is when you applied.
Yep, I applied my I-140 in a premium processing, which was approved in, I think, in a week's time. 13th or 14th February, I got this approval notice. So that was the first step that I could clear in a week's time.
So then you waited for 485 to get current, and I think it did get current in the next 6 to 7 months, right?
No. It got current in the next month itself. In March only, I got current. So we applied in March. And at that point of time, Victoria Chen mentioned that she will only do it for I-140, but for I-485, I can do by myself. So she had given me a DIY packet kind of thing, like what things needs to be done, which was like pretty straightforward, and we did it together. Together in the sense Garima and I did it together. And I think in March we applied. Our dates got current March 2021. In April, we got our appointment for the fingerprinting things. And in October of 2021, we received our green card.
Okay, so you didn't get any of those AP and none of that. So it was very similar to how I ended up getting it as well, because we just went through a similar process and none of the other stuff happened. So, okay, that makes sense. So February 8th, 2021 is when you actually apply, and by September of that year, 2021, you actually get your green card. And Victoria helped you with that process. That's helpful. Now, you went through this journey, and I understand that it was very organic given your profile and things falling into place. But now that you've been through this and you've done so much, what are the tips that you have for someone who's looking to build their profile or work with a lawyer specifically? Do you have like a checklist or a recommendation of things that they should be going to the lawyer with when they are getting their profile evaluated?
Yeah, I think it has to be very detailed. Like sometimes, like I think most of the times as a researcher, we don't keep track of things, and especially with these like reviews and journal committees, because these are a lot of time taking things and we don't keep track of it. So I think that is very important to keep everything organized if you are looking forward to, like when you are going to a immigrant or these lawyers. Exactly. So that is one very important thing to do. The second thing I would say is when you're choosing your like letter of recommendations, of course this the lawyer will also tell you, but more like we think that okay, let's get the letter of recommendation from the top people in the field, and that's what I also did. Like I asked like all my top professors and top people in the community, in the neuroscience community, to give me the recommendations. But when I gave those names and their description to my lawyer, she said that, oh, I mean, this is not good, because how the UCI, like the immigrant officers think is like if a professor has this kind of a profile, the candidate also needs to have a similar profile. If not, then it's a bad thing. So
They will compare you. Basically.
So they'll compare you with the whom you are giving your references.
Oh, okay.
So which is why I have to revise my references like a few times. Of course, there were some professors that like big professors, but more or less it was like a good distribution that I would say in terms of choosing my references.
So just to summarize, like when you're building this profile, you signed up with her October and you filed in February. I'm sure there was back and forth, right? Like you sent the citations and then she was like, probably not these references. You have to try different references, and you build that up and you go from there. My question back to you is, when you like, I don't know if you have some sort of a checklist for people who are going to get their profile evaluated the first time. Like, if I am someone who kind of thinks that maybe I read through the USCIS guidelines and I think I'm eligible for it. Is there a list of like 7-8 things, or the first detailed email you send the lawyer that you would recommend someone?
At that point of time, I did not have any checklist. I just wrote everything all myself. But I think based on the questions that I get from the lawyers, I think it was one of them like where were you born? Like not just your nationality, where exactly were you born, in which country, then whether you had an J1 visa in the past or not, and if you have J1 waiver or not, which is very important. Then also whether it's your H1B is cap exempt or like a regular H1B, whether your H1B is about to expire, like how much time is left for your H1B expirations. And from the research perspective, they always wanted to know like the number of the citations I had, the number of papers that I have reviewed, the number of conferences I have been a member on. There was no recommendation like you need to have a 200 citations to get an EB1A, but still they wanted to know this
Good number.
number. Exactly. So these were a few checklists, I would say, that I had to add it on a conversational basis with my lawyer.
That's perfect. And I don't know if how comfortable you are sharing costs, but when you first got your profile evaluated, do you remember what the charges were like just for a profile evaluation?
There was no cost associated with that, and I think I also evaluated my profile from Victoria Chen and also from a different attorney just to confirm, and that was Ellie Porter. And he also said the same thing as Victoria Chen mentioned, but I ended up choosing Victoria Chen.
Super helpful. And would you be comfortable sharing what the entire cost was, or when you like signed up with Victoria? Like a ballpark is fine. We don't need.
Yeah, I think ballpark around for both of us together it was around 15,000. Right? Yeah,
Roughly around that.
Around 15,000.
And then plus or minus a few by those medical tests.
Yeah, that cost
Yeah,
400.
right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your story. I think I covered everything that I wanted, and I'm sure anyone who's watching this video is going to learn a lot out of this. But just to closing thoughts, is there anything that I did not ask, anything else that you'd like to share, or any tips for anyone who's looking to go through this journey?
I think one thing which was very, very painful for me to get was my J1 waiver, which is a little bit out of context from the with the green card issues, but it was required for me to give a document of J1 waiver, and this, I think J1 waiver took me around 3 years to get that document from India.
Oh wow! And
That is very important to get it way before if you are ever if you had ever had this J1 issues.
okay, if you ever had a J1, then it's important that you get that waiver, and that was a long process. So no, thank you. And if anyone who doesn't know what a J1 is, I do have a video about that, and I will also link that. So do check that out. And best of luck to anyone who is going through this journey. And thank you, Tanmay, for taking out the time. And I will share all the details in the description box. But thank you, and have a wonderful evening.
Yeah, thank you. You too.
Thank you for your time. Bye-bye.
Bye.